I am in the process of removing the starter cover to get the power cable, the positive starter cable out that goes in here. It's mounted to a stud on the starter solenoid, and since we just made a new one, that's one of the improvements. This is going to go on there. So just a couple Allens. And then it's pretty fiddly to get this out. The hood here is kind of in the way. You have to first lift it up a little bit and then slide it over and then finagle it out of there. I'm going to spare you the agony and my cussing and cursing, which I'm probably not going to do. But just to install this, that's really simple. Just a quick side note. It doesn't matter what cover you take off on this engine, the air filter housing, the starter cover, or the front cover, you always got to separate at least the ground from the battery. A lot of people do it down here at the transmission, but I think that is too risky because the thread in here is just into cast aluminum. If you strip that out, then you have to fix that. So I rather take it loose at the battery, and this terminal type style has a little flat nut here at the bottom which can be replaced. So if you strip that out, it's fixable. If I strip this out, it's kind of a pain in the butt. Then you have to take your transmission out, take the cover off, and do all kinds of things. So I rather leave this alone and mess with the battery. So whatever cover you remove, always disconnect the battery. In here are contacts on the starter. In here is the diode board. You touch that once with the engine cover, cause a spark, and this thing is fried, and then you have to replace it. All right, guys. Hey, guys. I'm still working on replacing the starter cable, the battery plus starter cable. To get the starter cover off, you literally have to take the air filter housing off. This one here is still dangling on the choke cable. I'm not going to disconnect that, but the other side was removed right here. Remember that in the right side air filter housing, you have the crankcase breather tube that hooks onto the valve right in here. You have to put that back. Here in my case, I took both ignition coils. I'm still running the original Bosch ignition coils. Are they Bosch, BMW, whatever. Took them both off. On the left side of the motorcycle, the attachment point for the coil is used as one of the main ground connections. And in the Airhead list, the guys gave me suggestions on my motorcycle having some sort of full throttle, fifth gear, around 85 miles an hour, stuttering, sputtering. And it's not ignition related. I could already verify that by installing a completely different ignition system. And the issue is still there. So they gave me all kinds of suggestions, which I want to go over in some section of the video. One was the ground connection here is bad because there is paint between the metal of the ignition coil clamp and this ground cable. And yeah, here in my case, this is actually powder coat. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to grind this down so it's clean metal. Then I put some dielectric grease on there to keep the rust down and make sure this is a proper ground. Of course, the bolt itself will ground to the threads in here, but you definitely want to make sure you have a little bit of some grounding surface that this ground is mounted to. So I'm doing that at the same time. And then another part I wanted to mention is once you have this cover loose, you have to lift it up about, I want to say, half an inch, 3/4 of an inch. This is how far this cover actually goes over the engine case. And then it only will go out the right side. It will not go out the left side. Maybe someone knows a magic trick, but I can only take it out this way. The other way, it interferes with the, sorry guys, with the frame here. So I can't move it this way. You have to get it out this way and then get all your wiring out of the way. This here is aftermarket, my little battery monitor. But yeah, once you have, I took the coils out of the way and the spark plug cables, and then I'm going to do the grounding part over here. And now I can actually fiddle this starter cover out of there. Just like that. There you go. Move it out of the way, and there is the starter. It's all still, I mean, the starter is not new or clean or nice, but everything is still pretty nice because I was just in there. I installed a complete new main wiring harness, so the entire wiring harness running along the spine is new. All the wires coming from the diode board going to the starter are new. The only old one is the actual 12 volt going to the solenoid, which I am now going to replace. And I will do my very best to clean up all the contact points, make sure there are nice lock washers on there with a clean nut. I'm probably going to wire brush everything that I put on. And I also used the copper type style terminals, not the ones that are zinc coated. Apparently the copper ones have less resistance. So we're in here now. As I'm in here, I will also clean up the air filter housing, especially the bottom here. That's where all the grime and dirt collects. I'm pretty surprised. I put the new reed valve style crankcase breather valve in here, and I'm having quite a bit of some engine oil coming out that way. I don't know if that's normal. It all ends up in your right side carburetor. Not super happy about that. It probably is normal. I'm not 100% sure since this is my first Airhead. But you guys can please let me know down in the comments. So starter is fine. I'm not going to replace it. I'm not going to mess with anything. I just want to, all the wiring in this motorcycle was new except the ground cable, which I just put a fresh one on yesterday. And this, the positive one to the starter solenoid. This other cable, by the way, here goes over to the diode board, in case you're wondering. Yeah, so that's that. Lots of removing just to get the starter cover off, but ultimately it's all pretty simple, pretty easy. Alrighty, guys. So let's work through the recommendation list that I got from my buddies on the Airhead List to troubleshoot my high-speed sputtering. To me, it feels like fuel starvation. So when I'm in 5th gear and I really hold the throttle wide open for extended periods of times, extended means 20, 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds, it starts sputtering and kind of cutting out, but it feels like it's running out of fuel. And so the guys gave me tons of suggestions. I wrote it down. Sorry for my handwriting. But the number one was check the fuel line. The fuel line that I'm using is made by Motion Pro, which is, from the dirt bike community. This is non-braided fuel line. Ethanol resistance, very pliable, very nice, nice big ID. It fits onto the Airhead T-fitting and also the petcocks really well. And then I use those spring steel clamps on here. I have done a test run without filters, so I have another piece of hose that is without the inline filter. I decided to not have the filter screen inside the tank, which is standard. I removed those and put the inline filter in here. I have tried without the filter and I still have that sputtering issue. So the fuel line is less than 6 months old. There is no issue that it's swelling shut on the inside. There's no cracking. There's no nothing going on. So the fuel line is definitely checked, verified, and okay. Check fuel cap vent. Where's my tank? Oh, tank is over here. So I read this in an article of Snowbum on his page, that sometimes those air vents, actually there is a little vent hole here, see that one? That they get clogged, and then you have a problem that pretty much your engine sucks a vacuum, or you have a low pressure in your tank, and so the fuel doesn't flow fast enough into the carburetors. Right when I read this, I replaced this whole plate with a new gasket. So this was just done a couple months ago. I still have the issue. So this hole is verified, open, unplugged, no issue. The only thing that I haven't done is do a test run and actually open the fuel cap just a little bit while the problem is, or the issue is showing up. I haven't done that yet, but we're in winter. It just snowed yesterday again. So this probably has to wait a little bit. So the fuel cap vent is good. Check spark plug caps. My spark plug caps are 5 kilo ohm. Where does it say that? NGK, 5 kilo ohm. It's written here on the spark plug. Oh, right there. 5 kilo ohm. Focus. 5 kilo ohm LB05F. Made by NGK. These are the standard replacement 90 degree. They fit onto the spark plug, the threaded end here, really nice. They are very tight. They don't cause any problems. The high tension leads, or the spark plug cable, are also new with soldered ends. So this is all new, less than 6 months old. I don't remember exactly when I replaced those, but I went over all this stuff a little while ago and still have the problem. Here's the other one, same deal, same soldered end. So number 3 is checked. Number 4, do a run, open the fuel cap while the problem occurs. Can't do that right now. Check for bad ground, add coil. Sorry, a little congested. Yeah, my ground here really sucks. This is where the one of the 2 ignition coils is mounted. There is powder coating on there. I definitely have to do something about that. I will probably use some dielectric grease then afterwards to keep it from rusting. I will also put a one of those star washers under here to really get a good ground going. I mean, the threads in there, they are not powder coated. They should give a little bit of some metal contact, metal to metal contact. And the clamp itself here is also not coated. So that should be fine, but there's definitely a lot of powder coating right on here. So we're going to fix that. Then the other ground from transmission to the battery, I just made a new wire here with brand new copper terminals. Crimped connection, not soldered. So I read a little bit. This is a hot topic, just like oil selection and tire selection. But some people say that a crimped connection is the gold standard, just because soldered connections get too stiff and the flexibility of the wire is compromised, and then little strains in there can break off over time. Also, that solder sometimes has higher resistance than the actual copper terminal. So I went with a crimping route. We'll see how that works out. And let's go down the list. So check for bad ground at coil. Yeah, it's bad. Check for coil primary and secondary resistance. So I already opened up my trusty climber manual. It's kind of funny. You have to have multiple manuals because not all the manuals always cover everything. You see here's a Haynes manual. That's the newest one that I have, with all colored picture and colored wiring diagrams, it doesn't give me the primary and secondary resistance of my coil. So starter ignition coil right there. Primary 0.67 to 0.77 ohms, and then secondary is 3.7 to 5.3 kilo ohms, primary and secondary. So we're gonna test this. I put you in a stand. I have my two coils here lying around, and we're gonna test those. These are old, and I'm planning on replacing them, but I haven't done that yet. And as long as they test out fine, we should be okay. So let me pause. All right, guys, here we go. Two coils, negative, positive, or 1 and 15. 15 is the positive. Here's also 15 and 1. As we just read, let me pull up the numbers one more time. Primary resistance 0.67 to 0.77 ohms. That is between 15 and 1. So between the positive and the negative of the primary winding. Hold on. And we need to make sure this is all pretty grimy here. I'm going to have to clean that up before we install this. So let's see. Here and there. Come on up. 1.1 ohm. That's a little high. One 1.2. It's consistent, but it is too high. The question is now if this manual here is accurate. So let's see what the secondary resistance is. Secondary is again between the positive and the high tension lead connector in the middle. So let's do that. And we should be in the kilo ohms, 6.2 kilo ohm. .18 kilo ohm. The number here in the manual is 3.7 to 5.3 kilo ohm. The question is now, so both numbers, primary and secondary, are too high. Is that normal? Is that acceptable, or isn't? Is it not? Let's see if my owner's manual here says anything about it. So page 70 in my owner's manual, sometimes it's worth opening that book up. Ignition condenser, engine specifications, because it gives you the jets in the carbs, so I wouldn't be surprised if they're carburetors. Transmission ratios, frame design, nope, nope, no. Fuel, lubrication, brakes, weight, acceleration. That's kind of funny, actually. Gives you the shift points and the road speed. Electrical system. Coils. It tells me what model it is. It's a Bosch E 6 volt. Breaker point, ignition timing, automatic, advance. It doesn't give me the resistance. I already looked in, I have a BMW shop manual. It doesn't give me the coil resistance either. So let me pause and see if I can find another manual. So now I'm literally pulling out all the manuals I have. It mentions this is the workshop manual for my motorcycle, and it doesn't give you the primary and secondary resistance. I bet I can find that online. I bet I can find that on Snowbum's webpage. So this is useless. Put that over here. Then the climber is already here. Here's an older version of a climber. If I find the page where it talks about electrical system. Here we are. Let's go to coil testing. Coil testing should be tested with an electric bench tester. 300 sparks. Yeah, we can't do that. We can test that. Let's see. Alternator testing. Electrical system ignition. Let's see if there is a table at the end of the... No, there isn't. Yeah, they have changed the format of those manuals quite a bit. The wiring diagrams are always in color now. That's why I bought this new one, the Haynes. Ignition switch, starter, diode board, coil. It doesn't give you the ohms. Okay, and then an even older climber. Let's see what we can find here. Chapter 5. Nope, I'm always in the wrong section. Electric starter, ignition and charging. Here is coil testing. Nope, doesn't give me the numbers. So the only numbers I have are from this massive big old climber manual. And we are a little above those, as you saw. So we had 1.1 at the primary, 1.1 ohms, and 6.1 or 6.2 at the kilo ohms for the secondary. I don't know if this is acceptable. I don't have new ones yet. The 6-volt single coils are not being produced anymore by BMW or for BMW. And the only ones that you can get now are made by other manufacturers, Bosch, Biro, some other brands. You can probably also buy a 6-volt coil at AutoZone or Napa, but they are bigger in diameter. And then those mounting clamps, these here, will not fit. So I ordered a new set of those clamps. EME sells those that fit the bigger size diameter coils. And then I don't know if these are oil filled or epoxy, because usually oil filled ones can only be installed vertically or else they start leaking. I will get some epoxy, just some cheap coils from AutoZone. We'll measure them out first and then use two 6-volt individual coils just like this. I could go with a dual coil, $70, $80, $90, $100 depending on brand, but I think I'm gonna stick to the two individuals. I like it. That's how it was back in the days. At least if I'm replacing those old ones, I'm keeping it kind of stock looking. So next, check coil, primary, secondary. So we're slightly off, and the next section will be float level, float weights. Float level, I'm going to follow the snow bum method, which is you take your float ball off, and then you open your petcock, and then you manually move your float up and down to the point where it just closes, and then the metal bracket on the float needs to be parallel to the housing. That's how he describes it in his article. I will take you along when I do that. But for now, I'm going to focus on the electrical part. So I'm still working on getting this old power cable out of here and route a new one here. And then we're going to go and do the next step. So for now, we have checked fuel lines. We have checked the fuel cap. We haven't done a test run. We have found out that I have a pretty ugly ground over here. We have found out that my coils, they are consistent, I gotta say. So if they are bad, they are both bad at the same time. And then we're gonna go and do another little video snippet for the fuel section. All right, you guys hang in there. Just yanked the positive starter cable off of the stud here on the solenoid. in the process of installing a new one. I'm using brass gun cleaning brushes that you can buy in like a pack of 50 on Amazon or eBay to really brush this all clean. And the nice thing is it has two sizes, so you can really get into small surfaces. Some people would tell me to put some dielectric grease on there, but dielectric grease is not very temperature resistant, and it is not very conductive either. So I rather clean this up and then put bare metal on bare metal and leave the dielectric grease to other people. You guys can do that. I won't. I will make sure that we have some super clean, shiny contacts. And then you see the other cable here that's coming from the diode board. And now someone is probably going to say, oh no, that's not necessary. I have wiring diagrams from all the different Airhead models. And on some Airheads, they put, I want to say, I forgot what connection that was. Here, let's just look at it before you guys start yelling at me. All right, one hand opening my book here. Where are the wiring diagrams? Right there. All right, we are at 8384. Let's go a couple pages back. So starting with a /5, and this is 79, 77, 76. So this one, it gets a wire from the clamp 30 on the diode board going to, nope, I'm on the wrong track here. We're talking about starter. So the starter connector where that big ass positive cable goes to from the battery. I also have a skinny little, whatever, 14 gauge, 16 gauge cable that goes to the diode board, the B+. And then the same happens still in the /7 starter motor. Yep. And then we get to eventually to a point where that's not the case anymore. So some motorcycles have it. This here is a 73, 74. That's what I have. And there is the second smaller wire going to the positive on the solenoid. And even the /5. So there are some models that don't have that cable. I guess the connection can be made some other ways as well. But just wanted to reassure you, this wire is supposed to be there. Has a shiny new terminal on it because I just installed this wire not too long ago. So now we're just gonna scrub this clean one more time. And then we're gonna throw a new cable in there. The wire cable I made, I already transferred over this rubber grommet. Make sure you have a good one, not a broken one, because that's where water gets into this whole contraption there. So you want to make sure you have a fresh grommet. And like I said, I am not going to use any dielectric grease on it. So I have the new power cable hooked up after brushing everything clean. Even the used nut on the side towards the contact is clean as can be. Went over to the wire wheel. I also put a new split lock washer on there. That's stock, or more or less stock. It's already here in that little groove with the grommet. And now I just have to route along the spine back to the battery. We're literally getting the Dremel out to remove some powder coating here from the coil mounting bracket so that we get a better ground. I don't want to go all wild, just a little bit, you know, around each screw hole. Luckily, this bracket is not super flat, so there are some bumps in it, and as long as you get one of the bumps cleaned up, you're gonna have enough ground afterwards. So now you guys can see I'm serious about this improvement. There you go. Shiny focus. Shiny metal around the screw holes. The rest is still covered in black. I'm going to put a little bit of some grease, the electric grease on there. This is not a point where heat is an issue. I just don't want this to start blooming and rusting tomorrow. So yeah, that's bad. So all the wiring back together. We have a new ground cable back on there. I have a brand new 12-volt power cord on here that's routed through the proper opening. All the ignition coils are back on here, and my starter cover is back on here. The air filter is back on here. The air filter cover and all the good stuff. Only piece missing is now the fuel tank. Since we're at it, I wanted to show you this little cheapo battery disconnect. On one end, maybe from this side, one end it bolts right down to the battery terminal, and the other side is where my ground cable and this is for my Dean 12-volt hookup here, that one. And the other one is for my USB charger. And when you loosen this little knob, the ground gets disconnected. And then the only cable that's still permanently attached to the battery is from my charge port here, from my utility 12-volt outlet that I only use to charge the battery. Yeah. Oh, by the way, on eBay, they sell those little knurled M6 stainless steel knobs that I'm going to be using for mounting the tank, and I've already installed them for mounting my battery. Instead of buying them from some BMW parts supply house that charges 10 bucks a piece, I think I spent $7 for 5 of them. So they might be made in China, but I think I'm okay with that. Yeah. So my ground connected, my Optimate indicating that I have good battery voltage. It's a little hard to turn this little knob, and we'll see if it causes any problems. On my cars, I've had those for years. This is just a shrunk down version of it, so you can use it for battery terminals and whatnot. I tighten all the bolts down and made sure good connection to the battery terminals. And as I said earlier, I made a really nice ground, and it has one of those star washers under here to really improve the ground. All the other terminals on my ignition coils were cleaned up. All the wiring is running nicely again. My spark plug caps are back on here. So electrically, I have checked all the things that we had on the Airhead List suggestion paper. Now I really only have to check fuel flow and float level and those kind of things. And then finally do a test run and see if it still has the sputtering and the cutting out going on. I'm going to film myself putting my tank back on here, because there are still new Airheads out there that do not know how to take this model of tank that I have on here on and off the bike. So I will film this and make this part of this video. All right, guys, I hope we're not going to get interrupted right in the middle of it. But I'm going to try to demonstrate how to put this tank on. The tank that has knee pads, oops, without banging it into your handlebar. Make sure your handlebar is straight. And then put the rear bracket onto the mounting bolts. If you can see where the holes are. There we go. The mounting holes are not solid. They are rubber mounts, so they bend a little bit and have some give. And at the same time, you keep the front well above the steering damper knob. And then you just grab your tank on both sides, same spot, and just lower it down. And then at the same time, you kind of have to make sure you don't bend your choke lever, which choke cable. That one is always wanting to be, or it needs to be behind the petcock on the left side. Sorry, I can't show you that right now. I'll film it afterwards. And then once you have that in place, you also want to make sure you get your speedometer. Not that easy. Speedometer cable under your petcock, like that, because ultimately the speedometer cable runs inside your tank. So, and then you just lower it down. Here in the front, right underneath the steering head, there's a rubber bumper. Make sure that rubber bumper is on there. Now the tank sits on top of the rubber bumper. Now you have to pull it back a little bit, and then it goes lower, and then it fits right onto that rubber bumper. So now I have my speedometer cable, all my throttle cable, my ignition spark plug cable, the cable for the right side choke, all lined up properly here on this side. So this is all really nice. The only thing that's now missing is putting my fuel line back on there. Let me just grab you real quick. So this literally runs inside your tank opening and comes out here in the front. And you can tell if it's moving freely and it's not pinched between something when you can do this. The throttle cable and the ignition cable here, they're kind of in the same spot, but there is quite a bit of play. The whatchamacallit, the choke cable here, this is a very stiff one. It kind of makes a turn over the engine block under your tank. And then the one that I was struggling with is this short choke cable, since it's so stiff and it always wants to be right where the petcock comes down. So you have to get this on the inside here. Here the throttle cable, that's no problem. It has a little sheath on it. Unfortunately, mine here is kind of loosey-goosey. And then the other spark plug cable. So that's all good. It's all in place. And let's see if we can make this. No, we can show you. So here is a rubber bumper and a U-shaped steel profile mounted to or attached to the tank that slides right over the bumper. And hold on, let me pause. So I just took my tank back off of the rubber bumper. Now you can see that the top edge of the tank sits above your triple clamp, or the top steering head bracket here. If I would turn my handlebar right now, this corner here would eat into my tank or dent my tank. So you have to push the tank back in order for the tank to slide onto the rubber, and then you have full clearance. And here in the back, those are the two rubber mounts with the studs sticking out. So those I stuck in first before I even tried to lower the tank in the front. So the tank is almost at a 45, maybe less, 20, 30 degree up above the steering damper handle. Once you have that on, then you can fiddle around with the rest and then slowly lower it down, and then you push it back so it slips over the rubber in the front, and then you're done. All right, guys, that was project for today. I'm just going to put my two little knurled knobs on there and my toolbox in there. Wiring is all hooked up back together. Put my fuel line back on there, and then I'm probably going to start it up just for grins. So the bike is all back together, all the wiring is done, fuel line's hooked up, headcock's open, seat is back on, tank is in place, everything is where it's supposed to be. Ignition switch on, check. Lights illuminate, check. Choke on, headcock's open, check. Start. I don't want to die of carbon monoxide poisoning. I think we're going to turn it off now. I know it's not good for the engine to get started up and then turned off again without proper warm up, but that's how it goes. Alright, headcock's off. And that's it. Alright guys, take it easy.